Welcome to today's class. Our topic for today is the larynx. This is our study outline, and I hope that by the end of this class, we should be able to provide answers to the following: the definition, the functions of the larynx, the structural components, what are they made up of, the epithelium lining, and also the blood supply. The larynx is a holotubular structure that is made up of basically cartilages and muscle. It is located at the superior end of the trachea. This is the trachea, and this is the larynx on top of it. It is also referred to as the voice box, and the reason being that is within it that the vocal cord is located. The vocal cord is a structure that allows the phonation of sound. So it is located inside the larynx, and that is why it may also be referred to as the voice box. The functions of the larynx: they perform the function of respiration or breathing, and they do this by allowing air taken into the body to pass through it. So as you take in air through the nostrils, they go through the nasal cavity. From there, they go to the nasopharynx, they go down to the oropharynx, they cross to the front, and they enter into the larynx before they now go into the trachea. You can go and check up our lecture on the pharynx to see the configuration of the pharynx. So that is how they play the role of respiration. Also sound production, because they provide accommodation sites to structure that is responsible for the resonation of sound. They also protect the trachea against food aspiration, and this is done by the structure that is seen at their topmost region, which is the epiglottis. We say that as air comes through the nasopharynx to the oropharynx, down the cross to the front, the epiglottis on top of it opens up to allow the inflow of air. But when it sees food substances from the oral cavity that goes down to the oropharynx down, when it gets to the oropharynx, there is closure of the epiglottis to prevent the aspiration of food into the larynx, then down to the trachea. So this closes up. So the food substances are therefore redirected backwards to enter into the laryngopharynx, then to the esophagus, down to the stomach. So the structure of the larynx, we've said that is a tubular structure, and it's located on top of the trachea. It is made up of two structures. We have the regularly shaped plate of cartilages, and these cartilages may either be hyaline cartilage or elastic cartilage. Please take note of the regularly shaped, because this will be a point of target during the course of this lecture. And they are also made up of intrinsic muscles. Intrinsic muscles are smooth muscles attached from one point of the larynx to the other. We also see how this come into play as we follow suit with this lecture. So let's take on the cartilages. The laryngeal cartilages are made up of 9 cartilages. We have the first set. There are 3 unpaired or single cartilages, which means that they are just one. So we have the thyroid, we have the cricoid, and we have the epiglottis. The thyroid cartilage is somewhere around there at the front. We have the cricoid that forms the inferior border of the larynx, and we have the epiglottis up here. The epiglottis is a flap that tends to open and close depending on the structures that is coming in through the larynx. So this is located on top of the larynx. So the second group of cartilages that we have are the paired cartilages. This means that there are 2, one on the right side and the other on the left side. So we have the retinoid, we have the corniculate, and we have the cuneiform. This is the retinoid at the back. We have the corniculate and the cuneiform down in the anterior part of the retinoid. So these cartilages are 2. So we have 3 paired and 3 unpaired, forming a total of 9 cartilages. So let's see how those cartilages come into play, where they are placed, and possibly their function. So the first one we'll be looking at is the thyroid cartilage. This is the largest of them all. It is a hyaline type of cartilage, and it is made up of 2 plates of lamina that tends to fuse at the anterior end. And this fusure at the anterior end forms the laryngeal prominence that is seen mostly in male. And you see this protrusion in the anterior midline of the neck. So it is the thyroid cartilage that is actually responsible for this presentation. Then the second cartilage is the cricoid cartilage. The cricoid cartilage is like a ring. It's a ring-shaped type of cartilage. It is also a hyaline type of cartilage. It forms like a round border below the larynx. So it forms the inferior border or inferior limit of the larynx. So this is where it is located. So you see the thyroid on top of it. Then the third unpaired type of cartilage or single cartilage is the epiglottis. The epiglottis is like the shape of a spoon. It is an elastic type of cartilage and it is seen at the upper border. So it's like a flap that tends to flip upward or backward depending on what is coming into the larynx. So it tends to control substances that enter into the larynx. So talking about the paired cartilages, say the paired cartilages are two. We have one on the right and one on the left. And the first one is a triangular shaped hyaline type of cartilage. It's called the retinoid. Where you see this cartilage is at the posterior border of the cricoid cartilage. And this is where it stands. You see the cricoid down here. This is the retinoid. You see it at the posterior end of the cricoid cartilage. What they do basically is to influence the position and the tension that is created in the vocal folds. We tend to see where the vocal folds are located in the course of this lecture. So the next one is the paired coniculate. The coniculate is like a horn-shaped piece of cartilage. It is an elastic type of cartilage and it is located at the apex of the retinoid. This is the cricoid. We have the retinoid located at the posterior border of the cricoid, and we have the coniculate located at the upper part or the apex of the retinoid. So this is like a structure that tends to like create an elongation or a prolongation of the retinoid so as to enhance the functions that it performs. Then the next one is the cuneiform. The cuneiform is club-shaped. It is an elastic type of cartilage. They are seen or located in the anterior part of the caniculates. You can see them here at the anterior part of the caniculates. The next structure that the larynx is made up of are the intrinsic muscle. And the basic behind this intrinsic muscle basically is the configuration of the cartilages. If you look at the cartilage, you see they are irregularly shaped. So you see that one cartilage does not perfectly rest on the other. So there's no proper fixing between them. So there's going to be a lot of gap and spaces that will be formed between the cartilages because they are irregularly shaped. So we have a lot of open spaces to cover up. And we know that this structure is carrying hair. And for it to carry hair, it needs to be well guided and well covered so that hair will not be escaping through this channel. So that is why we have the intrinsic muscles coming into play. So what they do also is that they tend to alter the shape or the dimension of the larynx because they tend to connect one cartilage to the other. So they have the capacity to contract or relax, thereby bringing them closer or further, depending on the situation at hand. So they have the capacity to alter the shape of the larynx. So that's another function that they do, apart from covering up the spaces that are created by the regularly shaped cartilages. The intrinsic muscles are outlined. We have the retinoid muscle. We have the cricothyroid muscle. If you look at this intrinsic muscle, we can break their names down. If you break the names down, you would know the region of the larynx that they are connected with. So if you break this cricothyroid down, you know that it connects the cricoid part of the larynx to the thyroid part of the larynx. So it's a muscle that tends to connect those 2 points together. And cricoarytenoid, it means that it connects the cricoid cartilage with the retinoid cartilage. And these cartilages, of course, we know that they form the structural component of the larynx. And also the thyroarytenoid means that it connects the thyroid cartilage with the retinoid cartilage and the vocalis muscle. So we see that if you break these names down, we will be able to explain or describe the regions that these muscles are connected with. So we like to take those muscles one after the other. The retinoid muscle. The retinoid muscle, we know that the retinoid cartilage is a paired cartilage. So we have one on the right and one on the left. This definitely means that it would be connecting the retinoid cartilages together. So we have two types of retinoid muscle. We have the transverse arytenoid muscle and we have the oblique arytenoid muscle. These two muscles, of course, connect the arytenoid cartilages together, one on the right and one on the left. The transverse, as the name implies, means that they run transversely from one arytenoid cartilage to the other. So this is the transverse arytenoid muscle connecting the right arytenoid with the left arytenoid, with fibers running in transverse pattern. So the second one is the oblique. From the name oblique, it means that they run in a diagonal pattern. So they also connect the arytenoid cartilages together, but they run in an oblique version. So you see one from the lower end of the arytenoid to the upper part of the arytenoid cartilage on the other side. And so the same presentation is seen on the other side. So you have like a crisscross. So this is the oblique arytenoid muscle, and we have the transverse arytenoid muscle as we described before. So the second muscle is the cricothyroid muscle. The cricothyroid muscle, from the name, we should by now know that it connects the cricoid cartilage with the thyroid cartilage. Remember, we said the cricoid cartilage is like a ring, and it's seen at the lower border of the larynx, and you have the thyroid, which is the biggest of them all. You see it at the top of the cricoid cartilage. So you see the muscle connecting the cricoid cartilage with the thyroid cartilage. The next is the cricoarytenoid. The cricoarytenoid muscle connects the cricoid cartilage with the arytenoid cartilage. We also have two types of cricoarytenoid muscle. We have one that is called the lateral cricoarytenoid muscle, which connects the cricoid cartilage with the arytenoid cartilage on the lateral side. And we have the posterior cricoarytenoid muscle, which connects the cricoid cartilage with the arytenoid at the posterior end. So we have basically two types, the lateral one and the posterior one, but both of them, of course, connect the cricoid cartilage with the arytenoid cartilage. Then the next one is the thyroarytenoid. That means it connects the thyroid cartilage with the arytenoid. The vocalis muscle. Remember when we're describing the functions of the larynx, say that it helps in sound resonation, and this is because it houses the vocal cord. The vocal cord is a membranous structure that is made up of also smooth muscle. They tend to vibrate to create sound resonation, and they are embedded within the larynx. This is the aerial view. That's the top view that shows what is located within the lumen of the larynx. They tend to increase the thickness of the vocal cord because they run along the same path. If it is like this size before, after the running of the vocalis muscle, it tends to be thicker, and this tends to create a higher intensity of pitch and volume of sound. So this is the vocal folds that tends to be embedded within, responsible for sound resonation. And this is the vocalis muscle that tends to be aligned along the same pattern, which is responsible for intensifying the function of what the vocal cord does. So the different cartilages and also intrinsic muscles comes together to form the larynx. So this is the general presentation. You have different types of irregularly shaped cartilages linked together, but are not perfectly linked because they are irregularly shaped. So they tend to create spaces within them. And these spaces that are created are covered up by the intrinsic muscle, because this structure, as we've said, that it carries hair, so it needs to be well covered and guided. The epithelium that lines the larynx is the ciliated pseudostratified type of epithelium. And we've discussed the morphology of this type of epithelium. You can go and check up our lecture on the epithelium to upgrade your knowledge. So this is the type of epithelium that the larynx is lined with. And we know that structures are not just lined with epithelium, they are ciliated because they have specific function. We've said that they tend to flip backward and forward to generate a form of pressure that tends to push or sweep out foreign bodies that finds their way into the larynx. And also they are columnar because they are secretory. So they tend to secrete mucus, which also helps to trap foreign bodies or dust. So this is the type of epithelium that the larynx is lined with, except at the vocal cord region that is lined by a stratified squamous epithelium. So the blood supply of the larynx is very interesting. It's supplied by the superior and the inferior laryngeal artery. The superior and the inferior laryngeal artery originate from different arteries. So we'll be looking at that. Remember, our arc of aorta is somewhere down here, and we said that there are three emergents on the arc. We have the subclavian and the common carotid on the left, while on the right we have the brachiocephalic, which further divides into the subclavian and the common carotid. So we still have this presentation on the other side, except that there is originally one emergence that further divides into two. So let's talk about the superior laryngeal artery. The superior laryngeal artery is a branch of the common carotid, and we'll see why this is so. We know that the common carotid further divides into the internal carotid and the external. The internal goes to supply the interiors of the cranium, while the external supplies structures in the neck, then in the head, on the outside, basically. So this further divides into the superior thyroid artery, which gives a branch to the superior laryngeal artery, and this supplies the upper part of the larynx. So that is why we say that the superior laryngeal artery is a branch of the common carotid. But the subclavian supplies majorly the upper limb, but they tend to give branches that goes up to the neck and also the face to supply some structures around that area. So we have the thyrocervical trunk, which divides further into the inferior thyroid artery, which also gives a branch to the inferior laryngeal artery. So the inferior laryngeal artery is a branch of the subclavian, while the superior laryngeal artery is a branch of the external carotid artery, which of course is a branch of the common carotid. So it's always good for us to learn this trend and the pattern by which they emerge. It makes it very interesting. This is an exercise for us. This states that use the morphology of the larynx to explain its function. We have stated that the functions of the larynx includes respiration, the production of sounds, and also that it helps to prevent the passage of aspirated food or other substances that are not wanted within the hair space. We've said that it helps to trap them or sweep them out. What are the basic structural components that it presents for it to be able to perform this function? Thank you for watching. Let's meet in our next class.